Hello, friend. Greg here. Did you know that I created some Bangkok walking tours? Use your phone to listen to me yap on a GPS-guided tour that takes you through some of my favorite parts of the city, giving you the skinny on the sights and history that make this place such a shambolic, wonderful mess. Head to voicemap.me and search for Bangkok. On this episode, we start a series called The Land of Contradictions, where we discuss some of the cultural mysteries we're still trying to figure out.
So if you've ever wondered how Thailand can be well known for both pious Buddhists and raucous red light districts, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 for the cheap dental care because my planned diet of 100% pineapple 100% of the time was going to be murder on the old enamel.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 24 years ago, fell in love with the realization that after I did something rude, I could just say "Mai Pen Rai" and all would be forgiven. So I never left.
Mai Pen Rai, play that dumb foreigner card. Gets you out of all kinds of scrapes.
It's kind of cool when you make a mistake, you can still say "Mai Pen Rai" and Thai people will accept it. All right, I want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get every episode a day early, behind-the-scenes photos of our interviews, a heads-up to send questions to upcoming guests, and access to our Discord server to chat with me, Greg, and other listeners around the world. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. On this week's bonus show, we chatted about Greg's newfound hobby of baking and whether Thailand's climate affects recipes, my pride at seeing so many young Thais fascinated by the U.S. election, despite it being a bit of a drama show, some of the stark differences between Lumpini and Benjikiti Park, and how much Greg should trust his dentist when they say he needs work done, especially considering a few instances of unnecessary upselling in the past.
Yeah.
To learn how to become a patron and get all this good stuff, plus full access to over 700 bonus and regular back episodes, click the support button at the top of our website.
Right. And as always, if you have a comment, a show idea, or just want to say hi, head to bangkokpodcast.com and click the microphone button on the bottom right to leave us a voicemail, and we'll play it on the show. All right. On this episode, we wanted to rap about a topic that most visitors to Thailand have likely pondered, and one which certainly confused me in my early days, and that is how a culture known for pious Buddhists and conservative values can be so accepting of the oldest profession, which is seen by many as immoral. Now, indeed, this episode is the first in a series that we are going to call Land of Contradictions. And the first thing we're going to start by saying is that the issue as a contradiction is a very Western way to look at it. And we certainly don't want to act all high and mighty about it because, like we said before many times, our cultures certainly don't have all the answers, far from it. But the fact is, Thailand is known worldwide for both its monks and temples and its red light districts. Now, before we get started, we of course have to say that we are not experts here and we are just shooting the shit around an interesting topic. But the fact is, many foreigners find this issue quite the dichotomy, and it's one that's been well covered in Western media over the years. And I want to start off by saying I remember very distinctly the first time this was made clear to me. I had been in the country I've been in the city actually for just a few months, and I was riding the SkyTrain home late one night past the Nana area, which is a big red light district, and I saw a bunch of working girls praying outside in front of a temple, a shrine, and it blew my mind. I was not prepared to see these two, what I thought, conflicting sides of the universe come together so closely. So that was my first wow moment.
Yeah, no, I love this issue and topic because I do think superficially or upon first impression, it doesn't seem to make sense. Thailand is known for having thousands and thousands of temples. I Googled it, and the estimate is over 40,000 temples. And it's certainly for tourists and in tourist books, like the image of a golden temple and maybe some, Thai monks in their orange robes. this is an image of Thailand, but then you turn the page, and the next image is a red light district and bar girls sitting out in front of a bar, or possibly possibly go-go dancers. These are two things that Thailand is definitely known for better or worse. We're just dealing with facts, and so it does on the surface just seem like it doesn't make sense. And so certainly we're just guessing here, and you've actually did a little bit of Googling to your credit. I'm just going to completely wing it. I've got some theories, just Ed's theories of how these things might actually fit together, where I think in most Western countries there wouldn't be any way to make it fit together. To me
Right.
back home it would be a contradiction, but I think here it's not necessarily a contradiction, and we're going to do our best to explain it.
Yeah, and it's something that maybe we should have like a theologian on to discuss one time.
That's
because
right.
I'm especially interested in the contradiction of how Western Judeo-Christian values interpret this thing versus Asian values.
Sure.
And I mean, where I grew up, and it's not a barometer for everyone, of course, but where I grew up, prostitution, bad. People who associate with prostitution, bad.
Correct. Yeah.
John's bad, prostitutes bad. It's just a black and white line.
It's just wrong. Yeah, it's just wrong.
Yeah.
Sure. So Greg's done a little bit of research. He's got some little bit of formal possible answers, which I think are cool. But let me just throw out a couple theories, couple thoughts I have, and I'm curious what you think about this. I grew up Catholic, and when I was young, I got a lot of hellfire, or I was painted a very scary picture of hell, and I think Catholics aren't even the worst about that. I think some other Christian denominations might even be worse. And my impression of living in Thailand over the years and knowing something, in quotes, about Buddhism is that for some reason, just the punishment, it's just not so direct and so confrontational. Like that, the punishment for serious sins in Western religion is you're gonna burn in hell forever. Like there's nothing worse than that. Like that's it. Like you can't. It like hellfire. Whereas in Buddhism and other Asian religions, it means you're going to have bad karma. Bad karma means you might be reborn as a lower creature, which might lead to more suffering in the future. It means you're going to be stuck in this cycle of samsara for longer. And so it's not good. Buddhism condemns sexual impropriety. But I just feel that something, I don't know if it's about, we this is something for Prop Pandit, of course. I'm not sure it's necessarily what's written in the books, or if it's just the way Buddhist culture has evolved over time. It just seems that it's just less harsh in terms of the punishment. It's just less direct. Like there's just like in general, again, I'm just winging this. Like Thai people just don't seem to be in fear of hellfire. Like,
Right.
Am I wrong? Am I wrong about this?
I don't think so. And yeah, I mean, I remember myself, stealing chocolate bars when I was a kid, and
Right.
people telling me like this, you're going to hell. Stealing is in the Bible. You're going to hell. That's a lot more dissuasive than that's bad karma.
I think so. Again, I'm curious what listeners think, and especially Thai people out there. Bad karma is still bad, and there are layers of hell in Buddhism. I just feel like in trying to rectify what we're talking about, and this relates a little bit to some of your more academic quotes that we're going to get to in a second. I think that there's a little bit more of a weighing of the pros and cons. So you might be doing an act that is technically sinful, which is going to maybe build up some bad karma, but then maybe there's some good effects to this act, or maybe there's a good reason why you're doing it. So I feel like there's a little bit more of weighing. It's not so black and white as to what's good and bad.
Let me ask you this: comparing the two religious sort of mindsets, Western and Eastern, does Buddhism have a more personal responsibility focus than Western culture? Sort of like maybe like if you're growing up in a Western culture, like obviously you have to take responsibility for your own sins, but it's more of a like you're hurting the collective, you're hurting the idea of us. But is Buddhism more of like, hey, that's on you, man. That's your burden, not going to affect me. I guess it kind of is similar, but I don't know.
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. If it's an individual versus group thing. My second theory, my second theory, has to do, which something we've talked about before, is about the difference, the different emphasis on shame versus guilt. And I've talked to Thai people about this before, and they definitely have both concepts, and they understand the idea of guilt, for sure. But I still think that in Buddhism and in Thai culture, because they don't have the idea of God, or at least not the same idea of God, that I just think that Thailand is more of a shame-based culture. And so if things are done in private, they just are less worried about it. I'm not saying they're not worried about it. I'm not saying in private it's okay to murder people. Like, obviously, just because something's in private doesn't mean you can get away with it in Thailand. But I think that it is more of a shame-based culture versus a guilt-based culture, which means, I think in a guilt-based culture, it doesn't matter where you do something because God can see everything, right? Mm. But I think in Thailand is if you're discreet about something, and if you're doing something in private, and fewer people can see it or know about it, it seems to weigh less on their psyche. So I think this has something to do with it. Now, of course, some bar girls and sometimes it is flagrant and public and it's in your face kind of thing. But, obviously the business is happening behind closed doors. So if you, and if you go into, listeners, if you don't realize this, if you go into entertainment venues, go-go bars in Thailand, there's no open pay for play kind of thing. It doesn't work that way. You're allegedly paying for just companionship or to share a drink, and then you might leave a bar with someone. So what's happening is kind of almost considered like private business. It's like,
out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I guess that's my point. I think this has something to do with it. I think Thailand is a little bit more out of sight, out of mind, and whereas I think in the West, it's just a little bit more irrelevant where you do something and how many people know about it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, what we're seeing in the West now also is, especially in America, right, is the sort of like the dictating of morality and what you can and cannot do in your own house kind of thing. But so I think that
that's what I'm saying. I think that at least I think the Western religious view is that it doesn't matter if you're in the privacy of your own home; it's still wrong. Like, I think that is the traditional Western view, because it all comes down to God and what God is aware of, and God can see everything. But I think without the idea of like an all-knowing deity, I just think Buddhism in Thailand has evolved in a different direction, and it's more about not embarrassing people and not embarrassing your family, and being discreet about and being and so discretion, I think, plays a bigger part in Thai culture.
Right, and of course we've said it before many times. Thais are very practical, and they're very very quickly able to weigh two competing ideas against each other. Like, well, yeah, but and sort of take the middle path. No pun intended.
Well, you're right. I think it's less black and white. Even about morality. So I've got some more. I've got some more concepts, but why don't you get a little bit into your research here?
Well, first of all, on a complete tangent, when you just said earlier about how you're not actually leaving the bar paying for a girl, you actually pay for the drink, and then the girl comes with you. It reminds me of one of the greatest scams I've ever heard of. There's this detective agency, I think somewhere in the States, and you call them and say, "Yeah, I lost my bag of weed," and they'll come to your house and find it for you for a fee.
No, exactly. Yeah,
brilliant.
No, exactly. Well, there's a lot of things like that in Thailand, and that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, it's very kind of indirect, and like, if you're being very strict, there is a certain thing going on, but that thing is not being done directly, and certainly not out in the open.
Right, and it is just not worth the hassle of making a big fuss about it, because who knows what that'll lead to.
Right, right.
So I was Googling around a bit, and I found a couple of papers, and I didn't have time to go through them all in great detail. But if you're interested, listeners, there's some very interesting sort of academic papers written about this topic. And the one that I was reading was called Trading Sex for Karma in Thailand, an analysis of the reciprocal relationship between Buddhist monastics and Thai prostitutes by Amy Proskow.
Damn.
That's a mouthful, yeah. And this quote here, I'll read it in full. It's just a short paragraph, but tell me what you think about this, Ed. This says, Buddhist views towards prostitution have changed over time. There are several centuries-old Buddhist narratives that depict prostitutes or courtesans as strong, courageous, powerful women. During pre-modern times, then, prostitutes seem to be viewed more positively than they are today, and some even seem to have been highly revered. Of course, in modern times, prostitutes are not held in such high regard. Rather, they are viewed as one of the lowest groups on the social ladder. They are not offered much respect, and they certainly are not celebrated in Buddhist philosophy and ideology, as they sometimes were during pre-modern times.
So let me just interject here. So in some of the research I've seen, this is kind of my point. I think over time, Buddhism has taken different views towards it. And so, of course, we have a modern view and a modern opinion, but I think the religion as a whole has been a little bit more ambiguous throughout the years. So that might be one of the reasons why today it's not so black and white, because I think it doesn't have like thousands of years of condemnation.
Right. And this also relates back to the question that we did in Trivial Thai in our bonus episode, where you asked me what one of the Thai words for a lady of the night is. And it's Sopani, which comes from a Thai word, Nakhon Sopani, which means beautiful woman of the city.
That's right.
The word for that comes from a beautiful woman.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, the word for it is not harsh or like pejorative. It's really not harsh or pejorative. So actually, the second quote I'd like. So why don't you do your second quote?
Okay. So again, from this Trading Sex for Karma in Thailand analysis of the reciprocal relationship between Buddhist monastics and Thai prostitutes by Amy Proskow, the second quote says, in conducting her study, Weke, which I guess is another researcher, interviewed senior monks and unordained monks, otherwise known as Mechi, at the three main meditation monasteries in Chiang Mai, which is located in the northern region of Thailand. An important finding by Weke was that the monks believed that the karmic outcome depended on the prostitute's intention in prostituting herself. Thus, it seems that a prostitute's simple performance of acts of merit is not enough to counteract her negative karma. Rather, she must only be working as a prostitute because of her good intentions, such as helping to support her poor and struggling family. That's interesting.
Dude, I think this is spot on. I mean, again, I'm just guessing about this stuff. So but to me, this makes sense. I just feel that the way Thai people evaluate morality is a little bit more complex, and it's not so much based on it's not so much based on what you did. It's based more on why did you do it. And so they still might condemn the act. So they might say, okay, this act is wrong. You really should not be doing this. But they're just going to be less harsh about it and more look the other way-ish. If they know, right. If they know you're doing this, let's say to support your kids or support your family. And over the years, I lived on Sukhumvit for 5 years. And into the early years, like in a lot of bars on Sukhumvit, there's just working girls hanging out there all the time. And I call it grad student mode, even though I wasn't a grad student. I wasn't a grad student, but I was so fascinated that I used to chat with these girls all the time. And I was just, this is something I never encountered in the States. So I would ask them all kinds of questions about their life and what's up. And I was, trying to be polite, but I was still very curious about why are you doing this? And I mean, basically 100% of the time, I mean, let's say 99, it's because they have a child they're trying to support or parents or family they want to send money to. I mean, it's almost 100% of the time.
Yeah. Now, I probably at the head of the show, you heard my ad for my little walking tours here. And I used to have one that walked through the Nana area, which is not up anymore because Nana changed so much over COVID. I took it down because it was all out of date and I haven't redone it yet. But in that walking tour, I do remember writing something again, which I got from another paper written by quite a well-known feminist author. I can't remember her name now, but the basic takeaway was, and I remember writing this and doing the voiceovers very clearly. I said, looking at this through a Western lens of black and white is the wrong way to do it. You're just starting off on the wrong foot, because most of the time, I think it's fair to say, these women know what they're doing. They know what's going on.
Right.
They go and they do this unpleasant thing, but they can put their kid through school. They can pay off the mortgage on their parents' house. They can send their kid to a better school. Does that make them a bad person? Does that mean they're not worthy of
Right.
respect and
Yeah.
love? So
I think something like that is going on, where
yeah,
it's the intention and the reason why they're doing it matters more. I think people in the West would be more sympathetic about that, but they would still be harsher and more like condemn it more. Whereas I think it's just the way Thai culture works out, or the way, whether it's Thai culture or Buddhist culture, I'm not exactly sure. I think that for them, the karmic impact is a little bit more gray. It's like it's not as clear.
and it takes a while to get used to. Like, it took me years to sort of not see this as
Get
like
your head around it.
Yeah, like not see the red light district as like, oh, you better not go in that place because it's like it's skeezy and gross and bad.
Right.
And there's it's not all rainbows and unicorns, but it took me a while to ease into that way of thinking of things.
Well, my last theory, again, I'm just winging this, but I'm curious what you think about this. This is something that has come up in a couple classes of mine. The bottom line is sex is just weird. It's weird. And socially, how you talk about it and deal with it and evaluate it, I think is very cultural. In other words, like certain things, are just in your genes, and it really doesn't depend on culture. But then other things, I think you could bop around to different cultures and find out, like, wow, like there's a lot of variety here.
Uh-huh.
And I just think like attitudes towards sexuality, I just think are very, very cultural. And I think that's for some reason in the West, I think, the nature of Western religion, it's just that sex itself it's sanctified. Like sex is kind of a holy thing, or even if you're not religious, it just has like serious moral implications. It's just like even minor sexual things, like they matter so much.
It's built up so much when you're growing up, right?
Yeah, I was talking to my students about this, and it was just funny. Like I was remembering stories from junior high, and I was telling them stuff, and it's it's kind of silly, but I just remember it's like you find out that like Joe kissed Susie on the lips. It's just it's like, oh my God. And then it's like, I remember this other story where it's like the story was going around that like a guy had touched another woman's breast, and it's just like, holy crap. I mean, this is like earth-shattering news. Like,
dude, I remember the year-end grade 6 dance. I had a crush on this girl named Patricia, and Ben danced with her, and he put his hands on her hips.
Jesus.
Dude, like, that was all people talked about.
Okay, now some of this obviously is just human. When you're young... When you're young and in this case straight, it's like, I'm not saying these things are not big deals. Like some of it is just human thing going on here. Like,
just biology.
Yeah, some of it is that. But I don't know, man. I just think in the West, it's just like, it's just, and in Western religion, it's just these very natural things are turned into like things of epic importance. God is watching and paying attention and looking at where you put which body part, and it really matters. Like it matters like to your fate. It matters like whether you're going to burn in hell or not. It's just so it's just so significant. And then when I talk to Thai people, it's like they just have this attitude towards sex that it's just natural.
Well, it is.
It's like I'm not saying they're more sexual, they're more pro-sex, more anti-sex. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that they just don't give it so much weight and meaning. Like that's what I'm saying. It's not meaningless. Doesn't mean nothing. But I just think their just attitude is very Thai. It's just they're just like, yeah, people have sex.
Well, I agree mostly, but I mean in Western countries, we don't have the police wandering around known makeout sessions areas on Valentine's Day, watching for couples holding hands a bit too tightly, you know?
Okay. Well, I mean, okay, that
I wonder
might
if
be
things are
true, but
changing.
but that's a pretty, yeah, but that whole Valentine's Day crackdown thing is it's a pretty narrow thing. I mean, they are worried about teenage pregnancy and things like that. I just think in general, it's just that Thai people's attitude towards sexuality is just, it's a little bit more chill, a little bit more, hey, this is natural, just don't do anything stupid. You know, it reminded me the way, kind of the way I think of things here, it reminded me of a buddy of mine a Swedish guy, in general, I don't know if it's true, but like the image of Sweden is they're pretty liberal and about sexuality. Right. And I remember my Swedish buddy told me that when he was in high school, and he would have dinner at his girlfriend's house. So dinner at his girlfriend's house. They like after dinner they would go up into her bedroom, like in her house, and enjoy themselves. And I was like, dude, I'm like, as an American kid, I'm like, wait, what?
I could barely even enjoy myself in my bedroom.
Right. Like to me, this was incomprehensible.
Right.
And then, and then he said, well, her parents like realized we were going to do it one way or the other. It's either we're going to do it like in the backseat of a car or in like the woods of a park. So they were like,
she had those parents, the cool parents. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and again, I don't want to generalize about Sweden. And actually, I don't think Thai people would be that liberal. I don't think so. But my point is, I don't know, man. I just think that there's something about, again, I'm not sure if it's Thai culture, Buddhist culture. It's just, I don't think they think about sexuality as this holy thing. It's not like sanctified. It doesn't have cosmic significance. Like what you do with whoever you do it with. It doesn't have cosmic implications. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's just my final take. Like I think it's just, to me, it's the Thai attitude is just, it's a little bit more healthy. That this is a natural thing, with pros and cons, and you should be careful about this and careful about that. But it's not a cosmic thing.
Right. I think that's a good way to end it. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting discussion. Again, we don't have all the answers, but it took me a while to go from what the hell to
right.
Oh, okay. So
Wats and working girls, they can go together.
Yeah, they can, and I'm glad they do. Interesting discussion, man. Good one. All right, let's do some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss to decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. And Ed, this week I got something for you.
Okay, hit me.
Now you're a somtam guy? You like somtam?
I do like somtam. Now I'm vegetarian, which complicates things. I'm trying to avoid fish sauce and shrimp and stuff. But in general, I like somtam.
Okay. Well, I had a somtam dish the other night, and it's not the first time I've had it, but it always surprises me that I like it, and that is somtam kai kem, which is the salty egg.
Yes.
What do you think of salty eggs?
The simple truth is I'm not a fan. It's tricky. If I make a hard-boiled egg and I put like my amount of salt on it, I like it. But for some reason, when I try the Thai version, it just doesn't work for me. I'm not sure what's going on there. But I don't know if that makes sense.
I get it. I
like my salty egg. Put it that way.
Yeah. No, I get it, because it's funny. I hate, like, if you gave me a salted egg to eat, I'd be like, this is disgusting. I'm not touching it. But put it in somtam and I'll eat it. So I'm surprised that I like it in somtam.
Interesting. I'm not. I do like somtam. I'm not like hardcore into it, and often it can be too spicy. So that's like the listeners out there, go, order somtam, but be careful about the amount of spice. That would be like I would say that's the number one dish where you better be clear how spicy you want it.
My peddler, yeah.
That's right. But okay, I got to be honest. For like the Thai version of salty egg, it never seems to work for me. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't like it except in somtam kai kem.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Alrighty, our final thanks to our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping in our never-ending quest for cool content. Find out more by clicking support on our website. and connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
That's right. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. Send us a voicemail through our website that we'll feature on the show. Hit me up on Threads at BKKGreg. Thank you for listening, everyone. Hope you're doing well, and we'll see you back here next week.
For sure.
All right, let's do some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we discuss to decide if it's something we live about